Jay, we were whipped in that one. We set the total in the first ODI. We're chasing both those ODIs. It didn't matter because ultimately we lost all three of those games. Do you think this affects the confidence of the boys, seeing that majority or half at least of the ODI squad is named in the test side that's going to be playing for the Test Championship? Do you think this has any bearing on how we play our red ball cricket?
No, uh, some bearing maybe, but not to a point where I'd be concerned. First of all, the white ball team and the red ball team are two different teams,
Mm.
right? And the most glaring difference is the fact that the white ball is coached by Rob Walter, and the red ball cricket is coached by Shukri. And Chuck, you even look at someone like a Temba Bavuma who didn't do anything with the bat in the ODI series, but still very much trust him in the test series based on what he's done. Not only the previous test series against Sri Lanka, but in the preceding years to this one, right? And in fact, I would actually take away some confidence. You look at someone like a Coben Bosch. Coben Bosch is in that test team as an all rounder, and he did well with the bat in the last game, even though the Proteas lost that last game. He scored 40 not out in that match. But when you saw his name being announced in the test squad, you were maybe scratching your head a bit in terms of why go for this particular player. And there are arguments out there that there are other players who are ahead of him in the pecking order and maybe who should have gotten a call up. But where Shukri is concerned, I learned my lesson when he called up Dane Patterson, because that was the question, right? Dane Patterson is 35. He's not really been in the Proteas setup for a long time. What is he really going to give us? And then Dane Patterson comes through in that match he was selected for, and he takes a fiver, and you look at the bowling side of Coben Bosch in particular, because we've had such a spate of injuries where the bowling is concerned, and he's got an average, I believe, of 36 or 37, which does not fill you with much confidence. But as I'm saying, based on what I've seen most recently with Dane Patterson and his selection, in Coach Shukri, I trust,
Mm.
and I do trust that the team that is the test team is a different outfit. Maybe not all together, because there's an overlap, of course, in terms of the players. But when I think when I made the example of Temba Bavum, I think of someone like Kagiso Rabada. Kagiso Rabada is an all-time great, and I think it's not controversial to say that mainly in Test cricket. When you compare what he's done in white ball cricket, it's still good, but it's not on those all time levels where when you speak about him in Test cricket, Kagiso Rabada went to 300 wickets in terms of strike rate, has the best to ever do it. So you are speaking about Kagiso Rabada as maybe perhaps in that conversation of the greatest fast bowlers not only South Africa has produced, but that has ever been. That's not quite the conversation when you speak about Kagiso Rabada and the ODIs. And this is true then in a larger scale of both teams. So while it was disappointing that the Proteas did get swept in that ODI series against Pakistan, I do expect the Proteas to be a different side altogether by the time the test matches kick off on Boxing Day.
We've seen Jekyll and Hyde, but then we see them play particularly well red ball cricket. But then with the white ball, when you look at India coming to play T20s, when you look at the ODI we've played against Pakistan at this point in time, we do perform differently, right? And to answer the question initially, I guess I'd have to say and agree with you that no, it's not going to affect our red ball cricket in terms of how we play and what the things that are required to win a test match are different to what you would need to win an ODI game or T20 game. For starters, you've got more time out to bat. You can build a rhythm. Whereas, for instance, with ODI, if Janssen is bowling wise and he can't correct, by the time he gets his rhythm right, it's like 5 overs in and they've probably batted him for like 6, 7 runs and over, and you can't really get that back. Whereas in Test cricket, you can somewhat make amends for errors that you've made in the field, or maybe with the bat, for instance, because you've got the time to do that. But I keep thinking to myself, Jay, for instance, with the English side, that whenever they're playing good ODI cricket, because it's the same management, and they pick half of the team that plays ODI cricket plays Test cricket, you can somewhat translate their success into Test cricket. And so I ask myself in terms of, if one team is not pulling its weight to one side, and you've got Markram still there, Bavuma still there, Sorawara still there, does it not affect eventually? Because you've got two different coaches, two different styles of play, two different voices in terms of the mentoring of how to steer the ship. I always ask myself, will it not eventually come together to a point where we're like, we are not picking up, we're not compounding on the success of the Test cricket because whenever we turn to the white ball cricket, we don't play so well. I think about that constantly, Jay, because eventually you want to have or you emulate careers like Jacques Kallis. And I know I'm talking about all-time greats here when I'm talking about Jacques Kallis, but red ball cricket, you can depend on him. White ball might not score as fast as you'd want him to, but dependable as well. Amla eventually, someone you can depend on. Graham Smith, Sean Pollock, Dale Steyn. And you don't want to then chop and change and say, but Rabada is not as good in the white ball. Or you don't want to say, but Tampa's not as good in the white ball. Because for me, if you want to be a good cricketer, you should be able to do it in all formats. And currently, we have a side that is not necessarily the greatest in the white ball format. I mean, we did fairly well in the World Cups, right? And we should say kudos to that. But the choking thing keeps coming up. But when you look at how we performed as a test side, we were probably second best in the last 15 years. And so I think at some point, I think those two ideals, those two sides must come together to co-benefit or to pull each other down. So I've got concerns, but in terms of this particular series that we're going to play next, I am not concerned, but eventually I think those concerns will come.
Tell us what you think, because Chuck is asking the questions. Why does it not translate? Maybe you have an answer before we actually have an attempt at that. So if you do have an answer, tell us why you think we're not as good in the white ball cricket as we are in the red ball cricket as well. Do you think that what happened with the whitewash is going to affect what happens in the upcoming test match series where we're looking to make it to the World Test Championship final at Lords?